I have a mirror. It's a moon mirror. Moon and stars. I have another one in my room, but I don't know where it ended up. Horror time. No. The mirror is applicable. I'm talking about Brûlée. What can I say? It's applicable. So, next one for the Charlotte family. I don't know if, I think I have 4 more left after this. It's a big family, and I picked out the ones that I like the most to do videos about. Okay, the ones I like the most, plus Sparrow. Now I'm going to talk about Charlotte Brûlée, who is the 8th daughter and 19th child of Charlotte Linlin. She is also the older twin sister of Brûlée, who we see little bits of throughout the course of the arc. We mostly get introduced to her, I believe, at the wedding, and then we see her a little bit more later on, and I think Brûlée is one of the ones that goes off to Wano with Mama. But so we don't get to see that much of Brûlée, but we see a fair amount of, of Brûlée, because she is one of the main children that we interact with throughout the course of the story, throughout the course of the arc. Definitely one of the main antagonists throughout the course of the arc, given her actions that happen during the seducing woods and everything. So, going into Brûlée, she is she's stationed inside of the seducing woods, seems to be the main place where she tends to be. She is also one of the few children that we get enough information on, but she's not like the minister of anything. She's not like, oh, the minister of, broiled food, or because Brûlée is like creme brulee is where that part of her name comes from. And then I think broyer is like to boil or something like that. So it's Brûlée and broyer. But yeah, Brûlée is one of the few that is not like the minister of something. She's more like, I guess, like her job is to be in the seducing woods because of her power. She can use it to mess with people, like we see her use it on the Straw Hats, on the Sanji retrieval team, in regards to, copying Luffy's image and confusing the others with it, copying all the others' images to confuse Luffy and everything. So we get to see, her power when she uses it that way, and that seems to be a very good place for her to be in that regard. She also seems to be viewed as at least fairly strong, although Cracker is sent to help her deal with the Straw Hats. Mostly because he's like, well, he beat, the Straw Hat Boy beat Doflamingo just a couple of weeks ago, and now they're here, and no offense, sister, you are not stronger than Doflamingo. Although, as it is pointed out, Brûlée is one of the few characters who can actually mimic Luffy's powers, because when she is transformed into him, using her Mirror fruit, she is able to mimic his powers, because we see her clashing with him and mirroring his attacks during their little skirmish that they have. Which I think there's only like one other character that can do that, but I don't remember who that is off the top of my head. But Brûlée is the one that can probably mimic it the best. I mean, Katakuri can kind of, mimic, and anything you can do, I can do better version of Luffy's attacks to a degree. And Brûlée can mirror them, so that would be interesting to see about her trying to mirror, Luffy when he goes into, Gear 5th, when he goes into his, Toon Force setup and everything. That would be interesting to see if she would be able to mimic that, which would be an interesting way of trying to deal with the Gorosei, of just having that mirrored. But the thing is that would just mirror the attack right back at Luffy. I don't think that means that she can then mirror Luffy's attacks and then hit someone else with them. I don't know if we ever get the full context of that. But, So Brûlée and Brûlée by extension are both 43 years old, and as I mentioned, she has her Mira no Mi, the mirror devil fruit that allows her, it is a paramecia devil fruit, allows her to create and manipulate mirrors. It also gives her the ability to access the mirror world, where she is able to then, traverse large distances and have mirrors that she can use to look through and spy on people, but also use them as portals to get in and out of the mirror world. She can also let other people in and out of the mirror world through the mirrors, using them as portals, as is demonstrated throughout the course of the arc when she uses that, although she has to be physically touching the mirror when it happens, for them to be able to go in and out of the mirror. We also see that she is able to, as I said, she can physically copy someone's appearance, and she can either physically copy it onto herself, like we see her do with Luffy's appearance. We also see her able to physically copy someone's appearance and put it onto something else. We see her do this where she takes Nami and Chopper and Carrot's appearances, along with Sanji's and even Pudding's, and mirrors them and copies them onto animals that are running around in the seducing woods. And then the animals then look like the characters. Then look like whoever it is that she is having them copy. Now, the animals and such do not gain the ability to speak. They still have the whatever sounds they make as animals. If it's a frog, it makes frog noises. If it's a bird, it hoots or something. So she is able to mimic that, and she herself can mimic someone's attacks, but it seems like she is only able to do that if she's mirroring them at the person to begin with. That's the thing, is that because we only see her mirror Luffy's attacks when they clash against each other. So we don't really get an explanation as to, does that mean that she can only mirror Luffy's attacks at him? Or could she, copy herself as Luffy, use his attacks, mirror them, and attack something else with them? Could she conceivably be able to copy Gear 5th and then fight alongside Luffy and bash one of the Gorosei with it? I don't think so. That seems a bit broken, because that's not really 100% mirroring an attack, but I don't know the whole rules on that. But she can do that. The mirror world I actually find is quite cool. For being able to move around within the mirror world, and it is very much the through the looking glass aspect, and the reference to Alice in Wonderland, which is interesting. So there is that. Her being able to go in and out of the mirror world and allow others to go in and out of the mirror world and use that to gain intelligence and stuff like that, and probably spy on people in Totland, as we see that kind of happens anyway. So that's kind of cool. So going into her actual history. So as I said, Brûlée and Brûlée are both 43 years old. They are the 8th and 9th daughters of Charlotte Linlin, and I believe that was the 19th and the 20th children overall. And given the fact that she is 43 years old, that means Brûlée and Brûlée would have been born while Big Mom was still on Rox's crew, or at the very least still associated with Rox's crew. I don't know if we ever get an exact answer. I mean, she would have been, 4, 5 at the oldest when everything happened with God Valley. So she may not have a lot of memories of the Rocks pirates or anything like that, the way that Perospero or Katakuri or Cracker or something like that, the way that they would have the ability to have at least better memories of the Rocks pirates and the other mother's former crewmates and everything like that. The big thing that we do know about Brûlée's childhood, obviously, is of course that everything that happened when she was 5 years old, what happened with Katakuri. Because, of course, they have the incident where when she's about 5 years old, she goes and she tries to stand up to some bullies about Katakuri, and they end up beating her up and they cut her face out of revenge. And this, of course, then makes Katakuri exceedingly angry because he sees that his little sister has been hurt and that she was doing it in an effort to try to stand up for him. So he is not happy about that. And of course, that causes Katakuri to then go into this very much protective, perfect older big brother mode that he is in for the next 30 something years. And everything, this facade that he puts on, this mask where, he wears a scarf to cover his mouth, and he is, sets himself up to be this perfect big brother. And Brûlée is kind of the catalyst for that. Also, we see lots of bits where it's definitely Katakuri and Brûlée have a very close relationship. And we, of course, find out later on, near the end of the Totland arc, that Brûlée is very much aware of this facade that Katakuri puts on, in this position as being, the perfect older brother for all of his little sisters and everything like that. So we see that. It is also stated that I believe one of her favorite foods is, I believe, donuts, which is just funny because that's Katakuri's favorite food. So they have that little, set up there. I've also seen adorable fan art of, it's Brûlée after she's gotten the scar, making a giant donut for Katakuri and then giving it to him and then watching him happily through the mirror as he eats it because he doesn't think anyone's watching. Side note, we do not know how old Brûlée was when she got her devil fruit. Since we're not exactly sure on that, she may have had it for quite a while. Maybe having the amount that she is able to do with it is a form of an awakened version of the devil fruit, although I've kind of heard that maybe the awakened version of her devil fruit might be that she is able to connect to any mirror anywhere in the world, regardless of whether or not she made it. Which would be, given her power, given the mirror world's effect at that point in time, is an exceedingly broken ability. Where she, if that is the case, that would be a good version of her version of a awakening, as opposed to just, well, I already make mirrors, so what, she could just turn anything around her into a mirror? She kind of already has the ability to do something like that anyway. And that's kind of the copy paste ability of what a lot of other paramecias can do. So her, the stepped up, amped up version of if it was her, awakening power, if she had the ability, if she awakened it, if it was she can now connect to mirrors all over the world. She would still have to traverse the mirror world and still figure out which mirrors led to where. But it would be a very interesting concept of being able to, oh, I'm in Totland and I need information about what's going on all the way at Marijois. She can just activate her mirrors, go into the mirror world, find her way to one of the mirrors that happens to be in Marijois, which, given the conceited nature of the Celestial Dragons, there's definitely a bunch of mirrors there. Maybe not with Eam, but there's a bunch of mirrors probably in lots of places all over Marijois and the different people's homes and everything, gold-plated mirrors for them to stare at and see how beautiful they deem themselves to be. That would be very interesting, and she could gather information that way, I guess, or find her way into, I don't know, a marine bathroom with the mirrors and just sit there and listen as they talk about crap in the bathroom that they're probably not supposed to be talking about. But I'm not sure. We know that mirrors that are at least come within Totland are within her range, because we know the fact that she is able to access the mirrors that are on the Thousand Sunny, because she accesses Nami and Robin's vanity mirror that they have, and they access the mirror in the locker room, in the men's locker room in the Thousand Sunny. So I guess once the mirrors enter Totland, Brûlée has the ability to connect with them. But I don't know if we get the exact answer of how far her range extends. Because if she can only connect to mirrors that, well, she clearly can't just connect to mirrors that she made, because she didn't make the ones that are on the Thousand Sunny. And there's probably a bunch of other mirrors throughout Totland that she herself did not make. But if it had to be that she can expand her territory or her reach of how far her mirror world could go, because we never get an exact answer of how far the mirror world goes, her having the ability to create a mirror and then, like, I don't know, send it halfway across the to the other side of the world, would she still be able to access that mirror in the mirror world? I don't know. Brenda's like, I am on bed. Leave me alone, mommy. Okay, sorry. Back into actually talking about Brûlée in regards to the story setup. So, the first time that we are fully introduced to Brûlée is during Totland, and it is when Luffy, Nami, Chopper, and Carrot are wandering around through the seducing woods trying to figure out where Sanji is. And Brûlée has disguised herself as this mirrored version of Luffy and then engages him in battle. And, Nami and the others are watching this as this is happening, and they're trying to figure out which one's the real Luffy, and it's just like, okay, we'll go with the one that doesn't quite have everything lined up correctly on their bodies, that has, the scar underneath the wrong eye and stuff like that. And Brûlée and Luffy get into this, fight, and then as, Nami and the others try to run back to the ship, the mirrored version of Luffy, that is Brûlée, actually ends up chasing them. And, well, Luffy goes the other direction because he gets turned around. And what ends up happening is they end up, that version of Luffy kind of tries to attack Nami. And it's revealed that he is actually the wrong Luffy. And he starts attacking Nami and the others. And this, of course, ends up resulting to where eventually Brûlée reveals herself. And this is where she's, grabbed Nami and everything. And, starts threatening Nami and saying, like, you have such a pretty face. And I'd be so, I don't like people that have pretty faces. And everything. And, she starts, threatening Nami in that regard. I kind of think that if they met under different circumstances, Nami and Brûlée might actually get along with each other, possibly. I don't think Brûlée actually wants to hurt Nami just because she has a pretty face. Although she has, like, an issue with, people with, women with pretty faces because she has the scar. Again, Brûlée would be some of the older children, so it would be like, is she married? We never get any indication of it, but I guess it's a possibility. But again, we don't ever find out. Logic dictates the way that Big Mom runs her cruise. But, so she's threatening Nami. Nami is actually able to grab her climb attack out of her pocket space and uses it to, attack Brûlée, which makes Brûlée, allows Nami to escape. And then, of course, Carrot attempts to attack Brûlée. This eventually leads into where Brûlée forms the mirror, and she ends up actually trapping, Carrot gets sucked into the mirror, and Brûlée is starting to, describe her power. We also know that during this time frame that Brûlée then uses that power to make copies of Nami and Chopper and Carrot, and Chopper ends up eventually getting sucked into the mirror world as well. And during this time frame, Brûlée is taunting them and everything, and eventually, with Chopper acting as a distraction, Nami is able to escape, and she finds her way back to where Luffy is. Well, Luffy, in his haste of running around and trying to capture all the different ones that look like his friends, one of them ends up actually being Nami, and then he gets yelled at for tying her up. And she just, yells at him and hits him. And then she explains what happened, that Brûlée had shown up, and that she, what had happened, and how she can copy things and everything, and how Chopper had used his Rumble Ball. And Brûlée is actually, I think she's the only or one of the very few characters that actually figures out what Chopper is without him telling her. She deduces that he is a reindeer. And she's like, ooh, you're like a promising specimen when he uses his Rumble Ball and everything. She's like, ooh, you are a promising specimen. You might be very interesting for Mama's collection. You're a very interesting reindeer. So she actually got that he was a reindeer. She never called him a raccoon or a tanuki or whatever you want to call him. So it's just like, okay, I guess, that good for her. She was smart enough to figure that out. And eventually it does result into where she shows back up at the clearing where Nami and Luffy are talking to Pound, and she shows up at the clearing, and she has she's riding on top of King Bomb as they come in, and that's where Cracker also makes his first appearance, and they kind of argue with each other where she's like, I am dealing with them fine, and he's like, well, Mama sent me because, he managed to beat Doflamingo a couple of weeks ago, and, no offense, you're not stronger than Doflamingo, so I got sent to help deal with him. And she's like, fine. But she's taunting Nami and Luffy because she has, the mirror that she is showing them that has Chopper and Carrot on the other side. And she actually ends up then throwing it to the ground where it shatters into a million pieces. And of course, Nami and Luffy are panicked by this because they think that because Chopper and Carrot were trapped there, that means that now they have been shattered. Which, I mean, given the ability of what some different devil fruits can do, it's like Hancock, I turn someone to stone. If I smash them, they're dead. That type of thing. Or like other people who have the ability to, mess with people that way. Other devil fruits that have the ability to like turn someone into something else or something. Although admittedly, I don't think that Doflamingo's like string awakening ability would be able to turn someone else into string, or that Katakuri would be able to use his, Mochi awakening to turn someone else into Mochi. That would just be very, very horrific and disturbing. Not that One Piece hasn't done horrific and disturbing in the past at times, but I'm like, that's a bit much. That's a bit much. But so like, Nami and Luffy are panicked about this, but they figure out that, Chopper and Carrot are okay. They're just trapped on the other side, and that they can like talk through the mirrors. Talk through the mirror shards. So like that happens there. And then what ends up happening is, of course, during this time frame, Nami tries to escape, but she's chased, I believe, by Brûlée a little bit, because Brûlée like makes like a mirror form and like a puddle, and she's grabbed Nami and trying to drag her into the mirror. Thankfully, Nami manages to grab her climb attack, and she is able to use her Thunderbolt tempo in order to just electrocute the heck out of Brûlée, which is just, oh good God, ow. This is also during the time frame when Nami manages to pull out the Viva card that is from Lola, and she's able to figure out via the other context clues of what Pound has said and everything that, Lola must be Big Mom's daughter, so this Viva card is Big Mom's Viva card, so the Nami's able to use that to then make the homies around her obey her and make them follow her commands in regards to helping her and helping Luffy and everything. But what else ends up happening is, of course, during this time frame is when Luffy and Cracker are fighting. Brûlée ends up making this comment about the worst generation. And she's like, the worst generation, all of them have attempted, so many of them have attempted to try to take over Mom's territory. Apu and Kid and Rouge all tried to attack. And that Beiji was the only one who actually was, like, useful, and he married into the family and married Chiffon. So he's seen as an ally. Unbeknownst to them, he's going to try to assassinate their mother in a couple of days. Unbeknownst to most of them. And such. So Brûlée is like kind of, mocking about that, and she explains, Kid tried to attack and we sent him packing. A Rouge attacked and we dealt with him. He may have been able to defeat Snack, but Cracker showed up and whooped him, so a Rouge is gone. And all this other stuff. So it's just like she's just kind of, bragging about that and bragging about the power of the 3 Sweet Commanders and talking about how strong, Katakuri and Smoothie and Cracker are and everything in that regard. So they go with that. She keeps trying to capture Nami. Thankfully, Pound actually is the one that shows up in this regard as well, and actually punches Brûlée. And, she's like, you realize that doing that makes you a declared enemy of the Charlotte family. And he's like, yeah, okay. And that's when Nami Thunderbolt tempos her. But, that's what happened. She just falls into the mirror world through her mirror. From there, when we cut back to Brûlée, she is then wandering around the mirror world with her scythe, which she seems to be quite adept with the scythe in regards to her abilities and strength and everything. So she's not, she does know how to fight. I don't believe we ever see her implement either observation or armament hockey, but I just kind of go on a default thing of like, a lot of the characters a lot of Big Mom's children seem to have those at some point in time in regards to armament or observation hockey or something along those lines. And I would assume to a degree that Brûlée has that. She just may not care to fight with it very often. Like a good way of just showing that she would have had it would have been at some point in time while she's running around trying to find Chopper and Carrot as they're running around through the mirror world with, the ball and chains on their legs, that if she had like hockeyed up the scythe while she was trying to attack them, would have at least demonstrated that she has armament hockey. It probably not nearly, it's nowhere near as strong probably as like what Katakuri can do or what some of the others can do, because Brûlée's not really one of the frontline fighters, but you get the idea. So she then ends up chasing, Chopper and Carrot through the mirror world, and eventually she ends up cornering them and ends up pulling out a bunch of these other subordinates, Randolph and the Crane and the Talking Crocodile and some of the other ones, and uses them to try to capture Chopper and Carrot, and of course making body doubles of all of Chopper and Carrot in the process, which eventually does lead to where we cut back again and we see Chopper tied up in Brûlée's house, which is a cute little house. It's supposed to be like the reference to like Hansel and Gretel in the woods, the witch's house that's going to try to cook them in the oven. So that's the reference there. And we also see that Carrot is tied up above this pot of boiling soup that, Brûlée is cooking and is going to basically add Carrot as an ingredient. I'm like, I know it's the whole Hansel and Gretel reference, but wow. But it's not actually Carrot that's tied up. It's actually a frog that was turned into Carrot, and they captured the frog Carrot instead of the actual Carrot, and Carrot is actually hiding in like the little attic space. And while Brûlée is getting ready to drop Carrot in, Carrot then ends up causing this distraction, and this eventually results in Carrot revealing herself, knocks out Randolph, and eventually this knocks over the giant bowl of soup, which then lands on Brûlée, which I'm just like, ow, 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 boiling soup. Just all over Brûlée. That's going to result in a lot of, at least first, if not second degree burns in that regard. And Carrot ends up actually, I think it's Chopper also transforms during this, and they end up capturing Brûlée during all of this and forcing Brûlée and Diesel to end up working for them. And Diesel is, I think he's the long-arm tribe member who, like, has an obsession with trains because he acts like a train. I don't know. That's the case there. And, what ends up happening is, then Chopper and Carrot now have Brûlée and they can use her. And she's basically being held as a hostage as they're running around trying to find where all the others are. This also results in a way of trying to, torture her, is that they keep tickling Brûlée to try to make her work and tell them information. And they're like, so how do the mirrors work? How do you order them around? And Brûlée is like, I don't order them around. You have to talk to them yourselves. They all have their own personalities. And they're like, okay, so they end up asking the mirror to try to help them find, Nami and Luffy and, Peros and Pedro and Sanji and, Brook and everything else that they need to try to find. And Brûlée is there during all of that. This is also where, during all of this time frame, is where They end up figuring out that they can use Brûlée to go in and out of the mirrors. They save Pedro. They eventually end up finding their way to Big Mom's room, where they have to try to save where they have to save Brooke from where he is, and they get him out of there after they help get Nami. And Brûlée is like, there's all this, she's she happens to be in these areas while this is happening, because they need her to activate the mirrors to get people in and out of the mirrors, to get Nami and Luffy and Jinbei into the mirrors, and Nami or Luffy's, well, Luffy doesn't actually go into the mirror world at that point in time. He goes to meet up with Sanji and everything, but then they have to try to save Brooke from Big Mom and everything in her room. And she's there when they find out that Brooke explains that he had actually managed to get copies of the poneglyphs, and she's just like, ah! Brûlée is like just horrified by this. I think she's slightly impressed as well, but more horrified. And eventually they get to the point where they end up meeting up, where they all go to the Fire Tank Pirates base. And there is, Brûlée and Diesel are there as well. They've also been clearly thoroughly cleaned and put in new clothes, which I'm like, hey, they at least kind of gave you nice clothes to be in, Brûlée. You gotta at least thank them for that. She's like, I feel violated. Help. And so that's happening there, and she's yelling at them to let her go, and that Mama is going to be so angry when she finds out. And she's berating Chiffon for the fact that Chiffon is perfectly aware of the fact that Beiji is planning on assassinating Mama at the wedding and all this other stuff. And Chiffon, rightfully so, back talks to Brûlée, and she's like, you are well aware of what Mama has done to me over the years, of how Mama has treated me ever since Lola left and everything, and you didn't do anything to try to stop it. So why would I do anything to try to help Mama and you guys when I have basically been abandoned by you guys because I didn't anger Mama. It was Lola that did it, and I'm the one that gets blamed for it. Now, to be fair for Chiffon, she doesn't hold any animosity toward Lola for Lola leaving. That would be a very different setup for when they meet again in the Beiji's Oh My Family cover story, but that's not the case here. So Brûlée is actually there while they're they're having this whole discussion for, Luffy and the Sanji retrieval team and Jinbei and such, all talking with, the Fire Tank Pirates and everything like that. So Brûlée is aware of this whole plan that's going to happen, and they end up actually implementing Brûlée in the plan, because they end up having her, Luffy goes around, captures a whole bunch of animals that are in the Seducing Woods, and then has Brûlée turn them into copies of himself. And then at the wedding, they have a mirror placed inside of the wedding cake. And that way at the wedding, they can then, have all of these Luffys just burst out of the wedding cake. And just cause complete chaos and confusion for everything else that's going on. And I'm like, hey, Luffy actually, I know that it was Luffy's version of having fun in that regard, but it's actually a decent plan in regards to how to cause a huge amount of confusion at the wedding, to just make it harder for them to figure out, for Katakuri to figure out the future as to what's going to go on. And it's like, well, they all look like Straw Hats, so what am I supposed to do? Type of a thing. And that allows Brooke to hide within the Luffy clones and then go and smash the portrait. Of course, during all of this time frame, when everything happens at the wedding, Brûlée is trapped in a bag on Caesar's back while everything is going down, because he has a mirror that they are all supposed to then jump through after they attack Mama, so that way they can all escape into the mirror world and they'll be safe in there, because the Charlotte family can't get into the mirror world without having Brûlée there to affect the mirror for them to be able to get in and out of. Which again, and as I've said before, credit to where credit is due for Beiji. It was a very well thought out plan in regards to how they were going to make this work for assassinating Big Mom. They just probably should have used better weapons than whatever the heck Caesar made. But what ends up happening is, of course, when Big Mom gives off her scream, and then the weapons from Caesar don't actually kill her. They don't even hit her, I don't think. They don't cause really any damage to her. Well, they try to escape. The mirror breaks. Somewhere in this time frame, this results in them getting Brûlée, her siblings getting Brûlée back. And they're like, Brûlée, why were you working with them? She's like, I wasn't. They tied me up and they forced me to do this and everything. And she's like, I'm sorry, Mama. I'm sorry, to her siblings and everything like that. The siblings seem to forgive her pretty quickly. Mama, I don't know exactly. I don't remember if Lin actually particularly, accepts Brûlée's apology or whatever, but stuff happens. And eventually, Brûlée kind of confronts Caesar when they're trying to escape and everything else and other things that are happening. And then, the Fin Smokes try to fight back to allow the others the ability to try to escape. And eventually what ends up happening is, of course, Brûlée uses her powers to help, when the chateau collapses, that, of course, Brûlée falls and all of that, as does everybody else. Saved by Streisand, as I've gone over in that regard. And eventually it results in, okay, they have the three-part, or the plan where it's like, okay, so Pudding is going to go and try to make this new wedding cake. Mama is trying to chase after the Straw Hats to try to get them because Perospero told her that they have the wedding cake. And then the rest, several of the other Big Mom pirates, being led by Brûlée, managed to get their way onto the Thousand Sunny through the mirror world. So that way, Brûlée, they can lie in wait in case the Straw Hats manage to get through and get back to their ship. They can attack them from there. So that happens. And, so that's where Brûlée uses her powers to, allow Katakuri and the others to make their way through onto the Thousand Sunny from, Nami's vanity mirror that's on her dresser, that's on, the vanity dresser in the girls', the girls' room and everything. And then, so that allows Katakuri and Perospero and a bunch of other soldiers to make their way onto the ship so they can wait for the Straw Hats. The next time we see Brûlée is when Luffy and Katakuri are clashing on the Thousand Sunny, and everything is happening on the shore with Pedro and Perospero and everything, and Big Mom's trying to pull the Sunny back, and everything happens with that, and Brûlée pops her head out of the mirror, which gives Luffy an idea, and he grabs Brûlée, and he grabs Brûlée, has Katakuri grabbed, and then they all three fall through the mirror. So that way that gets Katakuri away from those on the ship, because they were kind of able to deal with a bunch of the other ones that were on the ship. That allows, and unfortunately everything happens with Pedro, with his sacrifice, and then that allows the Thousand Sunny to escape and start making its way out of Totland and everything. And, Brûlée is, Katakuri doesn't like that Luffy keeps kind of, attacking Brûlée, which is fair. I mean, he wants to protect all of his, his little sisters. All the little brothers are like, hey, what are we? Chopped liver? Out of curiosity, I would be very interested to find out if there is any One Piece character, because Oda has probably thought about this, whose favorite food actually is chopped liver. I have no idea who it would be. Doesn't seem like that would be the favorite food of any of the Charlotte's siblings necessarily, but I don't know, maybe there's some character out there whose favorite food is chopped liver. I have no idea. But back to this. And so Brûlée doesn't like that Katakuri, Brûlée doesn't like being used again and again and again as a doorway to go in through the mirrors. And while Luffy and Katakuri are fighting, Brûlée manages to find another mirror, and then that's where she has Mascarpone and Juscarpone firing flaming arrows through the mirror to fire them into the Thousand Sunnies, the locker room area, to cause, a fire on the inside of the ship, so that way it'll cause the ship to burn. And of course, Luffy manages to, use this time frame to, destroy that mirror, and then he sends, using the mirror fragment, sends a message to Nami and the others to break all of the mirrors on the ship, so that way they can't be used, and to defend the ship and everything like that. And of course, that's what happens. to, to prevent more enemies from getting onto the ship or affecting the ship while it's trying to escape. They also end up, getting word later on that, from Perospero that Mama sunk the Thousand Sunny, which is not true because that's where Jinbei used, hiding it in the wave as they managed to escape in that regard. She, everything is happening along those lines. Eventually, of course, what ends up happening is Luffy and Katakuri are fighting, and one of the things that happens is Brûlée pops her head out of one of the mirrors again. Woman, stop taunting this boy. And is like, ha 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 ha, you'll never beat Katakuri. He's perfect and wonderful and amazing and everything like that. And Luffy tries to punch her just to make her be quiet. And, Katakuri grabs his fist and like, you're not punching my little sister and everything like that. And so, Luffy and Katakuri are fighting during that time frame. Stuff happens where Luffy, attacks Katakuri while he's in his mochi temple eating his donuts and everything like that for his merienda. And then, of course, at one point in time during the battle, Luffy is running out of steam and he goes out of his, gear fourth and everything like that. Well, he's been, using all of his powers to fight, all of his attacks up to that point in time to try to fight Katakuri. So he's like, okay, I need to get out of here and I need to rest. And he thankfully spots Brûlée, grabs her, jumps through a mirror. So Katakuri can't go through the mirror and follow him, and he's angry about that because he's like, he can't go and save his sister, but he grabs Brûlée, and they end up landing on Nuts Island is where they land. During this, before this time frame, at some point in time during this fight, Brûlée had actually been in contact with Pudding and telling her that Oven was on his way to Cacao Island to ambush the Straw Hats, and saying that the Straw Hats were on their way to ambush or to Cacao Island because she didn't know that Sanji was on the ship right now, or that Sanji was helping Pudding right now with everything, but saying that the Straw Hats were on their way and everything like that. And all of that. So that kind of happens there. And then, of course, we do have it where Luffy and Brûlée end up on Nuts Island, which happens to be where Mama is and rampaging at that point in time, which leads to where, Brûlée is like, Mama, help me. And Mama's like, did you betray me, Brûlée? And she's like, oh, God, no. So she's, Brûlée is just like begging her siblings to help her because Amande, along with her, her sibling group are on this island because it's Amande's island, as I mentioned in Amande's video. They're trying to save Brûlée, and what Luffy does, I love this, because at one point in time during this whole skirmish thing, Brûlée managed to get away, and Luffy's like, okay, well, I need to find her again, and he keeps calling her Branch, and she keeps correcting him, so he yells out, where are you, Branch? And she pops her head out of where she was hiding, which is so stupid. She goes, it's Brûlée! And then she's like, oh, crap, what did I do that? And then Luffy runs over, grabs her, and he ends up tying her up, to have her, like, in a bag on his back again, like what they had done with her earlier with Caesar. And like what they had been doing with her. I'm sorry, that is so funny for like they're running around and like Perospero trying to help save Brûlée, the Amande's, her sibling group are trying to save her, and Luffy keeps using Brûlée as like a shield because they won't attack their sister. He goes, Branch, and like just was like running around trying to use her as a shield, which I love and is so funny. I love that bit. That part is so funny. And Brûlée is just like, I guess I'm resigned to this for the time being. I am so tired of this. And of course, because he has Brûlée, after he's, rested for 10 minutes or whatever, he goes back into the mirror world, fights Katakuri, jumps out again using Brûlée where he hid her, and then jumps back in and out for the next 12 hours and everything as he's fighting against Katakuri. Eventually, of course, what ends up happening is Brûlée ends up, Luffy is finally ready to actually, fully just fight Katakuri, and everything happens with that, with Katakuri, and what happens with Flampe, and Luffy figuring out how to use, Future Sight and everything like that. And Luffy eventually, defeating Katakuri. And during that time frame is when Peckhams has shown up in disguise, even though it is not a very good disguise. And he's grabbed Brûlée because he's heard about what happened to Pedro. So he's like, I'm going to help you, Straw Hat, in Pedro's memory to help you escape. And he knows that they need Brûlée to activate the mirrors. So with Peckham's help, they end up, using Brûlée to get out of the mirror on Cacao Island. So that way, and they kind of use Brûlée as a shield, and the Vinsmokes are there, and they're able to help get Sanji's there, and he's able to help get Luffy and everything, and they're able to escape that way and everything. But Brûlée is like ranting about the fact of Katakuri has been defeated and everything. She's just so shocked and furious about this, and she's telling the others about this, and she brings them the anti-Germa bullets that they've developed that they used. So they can attack the Germa siblings with them. And after that part of the battle is all finished and everything, Brûlée eventually ends up going back into the mirror world, where she finds Katakuri, where he's lying on the ground injured and everything after his fight with Luffy, and she starts treating his wounds and everything like that, and she's giving him an update on what happened. She's like, yeah, Straw Hat and Blacklegs managed to escape with the assistance of the Germa 66 and everything like that. And she's kind of watching Katakuri as this is happening, because she kind of watched the fight between Luffy and Katakuri, and while she was angry over the fact that Katakuri lost, or appeared to lose because he chose not to get back up again, she kind of scolds him for the fact that he smiles when he finds out that Straw Hat managed to escape. She kind of scolds him for that. She's just shaking her head at that, and she's revealing to him that she's known all along that he's been hiding his eel mouth and everything, and trying to be this perfect big brother and everything, and all of that. So they, we get to see that very good relationship that those two have at that moment. And then the next thing that we get in regards to what's canonically what happens with Brûlée is they have the the Germa 66's Emotionless Excursion cover story, where of course Reiju and Ichiji go back to try to save Niji and Yonji. And what we have is that she helps Brûlée helps transport the prisoner book that has those two in it back to Whole Cake Island, and then she's talking with Cracker in the recovery room where he is, and saying that, oh, there seems to be reports that someone's attacking Chocolate Town. That must be Ichiji and Reiju coming to try to save their brothers. It's not. She lets Cracker go through, and they investigate, and they find out that it's actually Kuzan and Van Auger from the Blackbeard Pirates that have attacked, and that they are capturing Pudding. And Brûlée just kind of has to watch in horror as Aokiji just takes out Cracker so easily, freezes Cracker, and then Brûlée has to just watch in horror and anguish as Pudding is captured and taken. And she's just we see her, she's just weeping over the fact that she couldn't help save Pudding. And I think Brûlée and Pudding actually had a decent relationship as well. But it's for the Big Mom Pirates, unless they find someone like Siobhan found with Beiji, and Praline found with with Aladdin and his crew and such, unless they find this other outlet that is this much better and much healthier outlet than what they are exposed to their whole lives as being part of Big Mom's family, they still have these sibling connections. I'm sure Chiffon and Lola, to a degree, would still look up to Katakuri, and stuff like that. They still have those memories there, fun memories of being with their siblings and everything like that. But it's still this traumatic experience, and she couldn't do anything as her little sister is captured and taken away right from under their noses. So Brûlée is not happy about that. Um, and that's where the canon information ends so far for what we've seen for Brûlée. In regards to predictions as to what might happen with Brûlée, we don't know exactly, since we don't know Mama's fate. We don't know the full fate of Totland at this point in time. Brûlée and the others may end up putting together a rescue party to go try to save Pudding at some point in time. And everything, or something else might happen with that. Brûlée might show up at some point in time, and they may, with some of the others, and either, I don't know, maybe they're like, you may have attacked our homeland, Luffy, and you're technically one of the reasons why our mother is dead now or injured or whatever the heck happened with Mama, but we need to save Pudding. And Luffy's like, yeah, I'll help save Pudding and everything. So it's like that might happen. I don't know. We'll see. But I did want to touch on the little bit of, like non-canon information that we have about Brûlée in regards to what happens in film Red, because Brûlée is actually a rather integral part of what happens in that movie. So, Brûlée and Oven are at the concert that Uta is throwing on Elysia. They try to actually kidnap Uta while everything is going down. And of course, what happens is Brûlée and Oven, along with all of their subordinates that are there, get turned into the song lyrics, or the song tune that Uta makes, using her powers and everything. And then they are eventually freed when Kobe and the others show up to free the Straw Hats that have been strung up as musical notes. And what ends up happening is, of course, Brûlée is stuck there, and Oven is like telling Kobe, it's just like, yeah, fine, leave me here, but can you at least free my sister? And of course, as I mentioned with Katakuri is on his way to try to help them, but it's more he's on his way to try to help Brûlée, and Oven, not so much. He's like, they captured my little sister. And your little brother. They captured my little sister. I must go and save her. Fukuoka said, yeah, they also captured Oven. Are you going to do anything about that? Oven's a grown man. He can take care of himself. I must protect the precious Brûlée. It's like, really? But when everything is happening on Elysia, of course, Brûlée and Oven don't necessarily want to work with the Straw Hats, and Kobe and the sword and everything like that. But when Nami is running around inside, when Nami and the others are trapped inside of the basement library area where they're getting information about Top Musica, Nami actually yells into the mirror because she knows that Brûlée has to be watching, and she's like, I know that you're in there, Brûlée, and if you ever want to see your family again, you have to help us get out of here. And Brûlée pops up and she's like, you mean if I help you, I'll get to see Katakuri again? And Nami's like, yes. So Brûlée helps them escape that way through the mirror world, and then ends up helping them when they go to try to fight against, when they go to finally face off against Uta. And both Brûlée and Oven get like the nice new, cool looking punk outfits, which I have to admit look very awesome on them. And so they try to have, Brûlée is there, and Brûlée is trying to use her mirror world to allow all the civilians and everything like that were turned into, toys and, little objects or whatever by Uta, allow them to get into her mirror space so that way they're safe, while Blue Uno is doing the same thing with his Dorador fruit to get them into a safe place. Because, and I've stated this before for the other Charlotte siblings that I've talked about, they do seem to care about the people within Totland that are under their protection. Maybe not as much as they care about like their own siblings or something like that, but they do seem to still care about them. Because like as I said, Amande is trying to help clean up her own island when everything happens. Perospero is nice to the kids. The other ones work on trying to protect the civilians when Mama goes on a rampage. Brûlée seems to get along okay with like Diesel and the other ones that work with her in the Seducing Woods and everything. So there's that whole concept there. So I don't think Brûlée necessarily just wants to see a bunch of civilians hurt. Innocent civilians that just came here to have like a fun time at the concert. I don't think she particularly wants to see them get hurt. they haven't personally done anything wrong against her or her family. So they have, that and everything, and they're protecting. They have Sunny and some of the others protecting her, and Blue and O while they're doing these, their little pocket dimension setups. And, at one point in time, Brûlée is almost attacked by something, and Sanji protects her, and he's just like, I can't let, someone like, I can't let a woman be hurt and all of this, and she kind of blushes at that. And then, of course, they have the connection where, when Katakuri shows up at the fight out in the real world alongside Shanks and everything, when Top Musica is happening, he explains that he can use his future sight with his bond with Brûlée to determine where to attack in the mirror, where to attack in the real world to coincide with something in the Mirrorverse, to, see what's going on and everything. Also, when this is going on, because Uta can control the bodies of the people who are all asleep, she has, Brûlée is actually like trying to like attack Katakuri while all of that is going down. And of course, Katakuri will not attack Brûlée because he won't attack one of his siblings in that regard. So they have all of that going on there, and eventually they are able to, as I stated in other stuff, they defeat Top Musica, and eventually it is, Brûlée and Oven wake up in the real world, and Katakuri and them all head back home, and then we have the little scene at the end of the movie when they have, where they're going through and showing all the different characters all over the world, listening to, Uta's songs and everything that we see, we see Brûlée and Katakuri and Pudding in Totland listening to the song and everything on the tone dial. Which, again, yes, I'm well aware of the fact that Film Red is not canon, although they just made the snails that Uta used in the movie canon by making them be made by, that they're made by Vegapunk, and that Uta somehow got her hands on one of them in the movie. So those snails are canon, but it's also like, and Uta herself is canon, depending on how far canon you want to make her in regards to what is canon and not canon with her. But she is Shanks' daughter and everything. But it is kind of this whole thing of like, stuff that happened in Film Red is kind of being implemented in what's happening now in One Piece. So is there a possibility that something with Brûlée or her devil fruit that was implemented in Film Red could get implemented in, in the actual story? Having her mirrors act as, like a way of, evacuating civilians or something like that, or, having it be that, I don't know, maybe she does decide to work with the Straw Hats because, like, the Katakuri is like, they're our best option and it's our only way of trying to survive with everything that's going on, because, Blackbeard's not going to care. So we have to work with the Straw Hats or something like that. So something along those lines would be interesting too. But I'm not exactly 100% sure how that will fall in the setup of everything for what can and cannot happen with Brûlée and her abilities and everything like that. But I would like to see her again. See any other character development we've gotten with her would be interesting. But that's what we have. That's what I have here. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!